Well, this is Friday morning, and my Friday morning is about to be made, and yours, dear viewer, by meeting Pat McArt. How are you this morning, Pat?
I'm grand, Jude. It's mixed weather out there, but yeah. I was out yesterday doing my lawn, and by God, it was actually very sort of humid. Uh,
Was
you
it?
know,
Yeah.
we seem to have had an overcast, grey summer,
I was
but it's
going to
still
say
very
that
warm.
we haven't had have we had a sustained period of sunshine?
Not really. No, I think about sometime in was it late May, we got about 3 or 4 days of nice weather, but that's about it.
Oh God, this is too
Yeah,
much, too
yeah.
much. I was out the back. I don't know what I was doing, feeding the birds or something. But I moved from the patch where it was shadow of the house was on the lawn to a
Uh,
place where it wasn't. And once you get into the sunshine, God, it felt
uh,
good. It felt
uh,
good, and I felt starved of it. Having it.
Absolutely.
So there you
Exactly.
go.
There you
I
go.
maybe we're just two sun worshippers, Pat.
Absolutely.
Maybe we should belong to a naturist colony.
No, that doesn't bear thinking about.
Okay, okay. So stories in the news. The one that I noticed, and I think you saw it too, was Leo Varadkar has come out with a statement which really surprised me in many ways. He said
Uh,
the British government is siding with the unionists in
uh,
terms of the protocol, and what they're doing may lead to the breakup of the UK.
uh,
Um, why? Well, why is it's not so much that's to my mind that's sort of a self-evident thing. But why is he saying it? Does he not know that the British government always sides with unionists? No.
I actually watched that interview on The View last night, and it's the most hard-hitting interview. No, I had it come from a Sinn Féin, Mary Lou McDonald or Michelle O'Neill. You would sort of said, God, that's very hard-hitting. But the source that it came from, Leo Varadkar, he said what Britain was doing was undemocratic and disrespectful. It was one-sided. It was pro-unionist. He says they're taking the power from the assembly and giving it unilaterally to British ministers. He kept going on this. He says the Brits were wanting to impose something on Northern Ireland that the people of Northern Ireland didn't want, and he says what Britain is doing is basically they've signed a treaty and are not keeping it. He says that is not what honourable nations do. Jude, and by the way, there's one thing I had to laugh about. Apparently, I didn't see this, but I read it this morning. Brandon Lewis was asked some time ago, what do you think of relationships between Dublin and London? Like, oh, absolutely superb. And last night, Leo Varadkar said he'd never seen it worse. So, Jude, take it whatever. And that's a lot of that's very very. There's no punches being pulled there.
That's for sure. But would you say, would you choose between this? Would you say it's a warning he's actually issuing to the UK to stop doing what they're doing? Or is he wanting to present himself as a hard man of Ireland, concerned for Ireland's interests, north and south?
Well, maybe Jude as well, and maybe they're trying to claim some of the territory Sinn Féin seem to have had to themselves for a very long time.
In terms of the north, you mean?
In regard to the north, exactly, because Micheál Martin as weak as water on this whole northern situation. It's almost like he's an apologist for the British.
Hold on, Pat. No, he was up in Derry. He was up in Derry there only a few days ago, making various noises. I'm trying to remember what he said. Can you remember?
But Judy, it took him about 3 years to say that. Like, it's been going on for a very long time. Like, Jude, the British government are just doing whatever the hell they want, and it is disrespectful what they're doing to they're basically taking a side of blatantly. No, you're going to say they always did. But in recent times, during the Tony Blair, Bertie Ahern era, they were supposed to be honest brokers. They were supposed to be joint. Neither side moved unilaterally. They were supposed to act in tandem and act in good faith. Jude, there's not even the pretense of that anymore.
You're talking about 20 years ago. You talk about Tony Blair and you talk about Bertie Ahern 20 years ago nearly.
Aye, but Jude, the whole idea of the Good Friday Agreement was that they would act as honest brokers and they would not act unilaterally. Well, the British government, sure, even Theresa May said in the House of Parliament, what was it last week, or was it Monday? She said, this bill is not legal, in my opinion. It will not achieve its aims, and it will diminish the standing of Britain. No, that's a former British Prime Minister saying it. And here we have these clowns coming over and saying, "Oh no, it's legal and it's what do you call it, and it's fair and all the rest." Dude, if you're an Irish person sitting and listening to this crap, what do you think?
Well, I tend to be a bit cynical about these things, Pat. I don't so much listen to the words that, well, I do listen to the words the guy is saying, but very often it's for their own political ends.
Absolutely.
Every politician wants to be re-elected and get to attract followers. So when Leo Varadkar slams the UK and worries about the North, I think that's an effort on his part to present himself as a genuine nationalist with concern for the North and an awareness of the fact that Britain will treat the North with contempt when they choose to do so. And likewise with Micheál Martin was in Derry, I forgot what he was doing. I would see that. I would see Varadkar's efforts as an attempt to trump, if you like, pardon the expression, to trump Martin. Varadkar wants to trump Martin by coming out with even tougher statements. Even he didn't visit Derry. He wants to show himself on the side of the good people of Derry. Incidentally, let's think about the even-handed British Prime Minister. I think that's strictly for the birds, because the first thing that your man, Tony Blair, the very first thing he said when he arrived in Ireland for the first time as Prime Minister was, "I am a unionist." So we shouldn't be under any false conception that the British Prime Minister is going to be even-handed. He's not going to want anything to happen that will result in harm to the UK.
Yeah.
So it's a question of whether, I suppose, whether you listen to his words, whether they're important, but Varadkar doesn't tell us anything we didn't know. I think it's more important to watch how he's positioning himself, because he's going to become Taoiseach, and I guess he wants to give Martin a kick.
I think really what they're trying to say, and I think it's a big one, is they're trying to say what Boris Johnson and his government are doing is not normal. It's not the normal behavior of, even sometimes perception is every bit as important as reality. And the perception, you can run the two of them together. Just the perception and the reality is here. They are not behaving like any normal government. They signed an international treaty, and they're now saying it's the other side's problem, that they're breaking it. They're introducing domestic law to override an international treaty.
Well, they claim, Pat, that they're within the bounds of international treaties, that when some really bad event happens, that it's legal to go back on what you said.
Jude, there's a thing about an emergency clause. Jude, getting sausages to Northern Ireland is not an emergency. Well,
it might be if you're a sausage eater.
I know, but Jude, the whole thing. Jude, I don't know where all this. I see. Maybe you're someone you want to go on to. But I see Stephen Collins has a thing in the Irish Times this morning, which is a sort of follow-on from us.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether the big plan, maybe there's a Machiavellian plan, is that the Tory government, because of a whole lot of things, want the Irish government to have to introduce a hard border. And I think that, someone that Susan McCain, her book and her latest book said that, and she interviewed a woman somewhere up along Blarn or somewhere, and she said what the DUP wanted was a hard border more than anything else. She says, no matter what they said publicly, when it came to Brexit, the whole idea of Brexit, this is what, look, if we get Brexit, we're cut off again from the Republic, which is because of the single market, they'll have to put up a hard border. But they didn't factor in, there was a British government agreeing to a border in the Irish Sea. But Jude, the real thing is, if there's a full-on trade war between the UK and the EU, where's going, and by the way, I remember Šefčovič, the chief negotiator. He, a couple of months ago, he was very smooth and very urbane and all. I noticed he got a sort of tetchy the last time I saw him on TV, that he's getting really fed up with the Brits. Jude, if there is a full-on war, where does the border? Where does the EU meet the UK?
Stephen Collins.
All right around the
Stephen Collins mentioned that, and it's a logic. For once, I find myself agreeing with Stephen Collins. The fact that the EU will have to protect its territory.
Single market, in
terms of trade. Now, if the Brits refuse to do anything in terms of goods coming into Northern Ireland, then the EU is going to have to do something. And logically, all I can do, as far as I can see, is have a land border. And it'll be the Irish, they will give money to the Irish state to set up this border. Now, I think myself that notion that really the DUP are working towards, and that Boris Johnson is trying to use, I think that's like a loaded gun sitting on the table. I think it's like, I've got a gun here. Now we're going to negotiate. Don't forget the gun. For them to pick up the gun and fire it seems to be unimaginable. I really do not believe there will be a trade war between the UK and the EU. It'd be bad for both. It would be disastrous for Britain. So I just don't see it happening. I think he would quite like it, but I don't think Johnson's as big a fool as that.
That's debatable, but I'll take your analogy a bit further. I think the Brits have a gun on the table, and they're making sure it stays on their side. You know, a loaded gun. So I think there's somewhere down the line that this overt pandering to the DUP, which is about, what is it, 1 or 2% of the population of Britain?
Yeah.
You know, and they're giving them all this sort of everything they sort of want. They're actually willing to override democracy in Northern Ireland. Jude, is it 53 or 54 of the 90 MLAs elected recently are in favor of the protocol? The protocol is delivering in terms of economic benefit, and it's not even fully implemented yet. It'll get better. Yet the British government seem to be going out on a limb, ignoring the wishes of a whole lot of people to bring us about. Jude, and I think Boris is more concerned with keeping the right wing of his party on his side.
I agree completely. Absolutely. That's his target, the ERG. And people
but if he is a full-on trade war, he stays as hard. Jude, I heard, I can't remember his name. He's one of them wee chubby guys in the Tory party. Yeah. Mark Francois. He says, my father didn't fight the Germans to be ruled by. And I thought, this is the sort of guy that's keeping Boris, you know, in power. And they want a complete break from Brussels. They don't want any Johnny Foreigner telling them what to do. And Jude, that's what it's all about. So I think we could be collateral damage in that sort of mentality.
Well, we could. In other words, they could pick up the gun and fire it. But I don't think they will. I think Boris is using the fact that there's a gun there to help him in his negotiations with the EU to see can they squeeze out more concessions from the EU. And they're using the DUP for that purpose too. You know, they say, oh, we have to do it because the DUP are in a powerless state and they're cut off. In some ways, I have some sympathy with the DUP, as I've said before, because they are being differentiated compared to the rest of the UK in terms of trade. And once you become integrated in trade on the island of Ireland, you're halfway towards integration and in terms of political union. And that's where I sympathize with them. But at the same time, I don't sympathize with them in any effort to have. Just imagine, Pat, I said, if you had a trade war, it would be disastrous for the UK, bad for the EU, disastrous for the UK. But if you had a land border in Ireland, what do you think that would result in?
Dude, I remember some of the loyalists have tried to claim that Leo Varadkar went out to Brussels with an Irish Times about the bombing, and that he was basically threatening that this is what will return. Jude, there's a big difference between threatening and sort of advising. The PSNI, the security services in Northern Ireland, said before Leo ever opened his mouth, warned about the dangers of a hard border returning on the island of Ireland. Leo didn't start that and all the rest. And when he went to Brussels or wherever the hell it was, and they showed that Irish Times photograph, what he was saying is, look, we don't want to return to that. It wasn't a threat. It was advice, like any normal politician with a half a brain should do. So, Jude, I don't know where, I think if we go down a hard border, we are, I would not, and I'm deadly serious about this, I would not rule out a return to violence.
Well, I'll tell you my own honest views. I think if you have a return of a hard border, it'll be like the repartition of Ireland. And I think there will be fury in the south, as well as with part of the nationalists in the north. And if the DUP feel isolated now, wait till they put up a hard border in Ireland. They really will be isolated then, because Boris won't want it really. The South won't want it, and nationalists will be raging. And not to mention all the jobs that are going to bite the dust along the border communities there.
Yeah.
I invited that nice man, Damien, I've forgotten his second name, that I interviewed for one of those books about border and Brexit, to come in and talk to us. Because when I spoke to him some years ago about Brexit, he was emphasizing the fact that how often he crosses the border every single day. He's just one of thousands of people whose livelihoods depend on that. So even you weren't motivated in the least by patriotism or nationalism or anything else, and economically you'll be raging. And I just don't see it happening. I don't see Johnson being rash enough to push it that far. I think he's got it displayed on the table because he believes it'll help to lever things his way, but I don't think he'll follow through in it.
Well, Jude, okay, but I am not convinced. Johnson, I don't think he gives monkeys about anything. John Major and Tony Blair both, about a year ago, warned about the dangers about this. Johnson seemed to have ignored that. He seems to be pushing this one. I think his pure only concern is his own survival and his own status as prime minister. And I think he's willing to do nearly anything. That's why I know. And Jude, he's had a record a mile long of being totally untrustworthy.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, I don't see him doing something that he will know will result in disaster for the UK. Because if that happens, he'll not win the next election. So, like all politicians, he's got his eye on being re-elected and his party coming back to power. Just let's jump on, Pat, to a third topic, which is very closely related to those first two. And that is, it's a sort of a letter, I think, to the Guardian by a guy called Alistair McLeish, where he talks about Scottish cringe. Very good. There's cultural cringe that people talk about.
That was the Australian Prime Minister, Paul Keating, who said that some Australians, the way they love this British thing and they love their honours, sir, this and sir. He called it the culture of cringe.
Well, this is what McLeish is referring to, the Scottish cringe, this tendency to doff the cap. Well, the Proclaimers do it. You know that song, Cap in Hand?
Cap in Hand.
I think that song should be played much more widely. every Gaelic might say. But he says that this Alistair McLeish talks about two things. He says the people who are opposed to Scottish independence point to a land border and how difficult that would be. And there's something to be said for that. He says there'll be a difference in people say there'll be a difference in currency, and there will be, because I think Scotland will join the Euro. And there's also the fact that the law of stasis, that is to say, people are happy to stay where they are, not happy to stay where they are, but it takes an awful effort to get people
to get them up and going.
It's easier to sit pat. But this guy seems convinced. He says, what's going to be to our benefit? Will it be for our benefit, that is Scots, to be part of the UK with a disastrous bloody economic policy that's getting worse every day, or to join the EU and have this market of 500 million or whatever it is? And he's in no doubt whatsoever that Scotland will choose. Now, Nicola Sturgeon has named the day. She's named the day.
Is it October next year?
I know. Boris is saying he's not, well, the British government have said they won't give their consent to it. But she's saying that if they don't give their consent, she will use the date of the next election as a referendum. She says, that'll be the sole thing they'll go on. We're running for this. And do you think she's going to win, Pat? That's the long and short of it. Do you think she'll win if she gets permission, or do you think she'll win even if she just uses the general election as a referendum?
Well, Jude, I suppose this, right, SNP, I think, have won the last 7 elections. That's an indicator. On 2014, they were given all sorts of assurances about their position in the EU, about the stability and all the rest. Jude, I don't think, since then, the 8 years that have passed since, the landscape in Britain has changed totally. It's English nationalism now as way to the forefront. the concerns of Scotland are not getting played out at all. Scotland would be a far better off, I would think, as an independent country. For years they were conned that they couldn't stand their own. Yet most of the gas was off the Scottish coast. A lot of the other energies were off. The oil was off the Scottish coast. You tell me a Scottish government couldn't have used all that infrastructure? Look at Norway. Look at Sweden. Look at the Republic of Ireland, where the growth rate, despite difficulties, is way ahead of Scotland's. Jude, I have no doubt, excuse me, that Scotland could do it on its own.
It could, but will they vote for it, Pat?
Well, here's the point. Here's the point, Jude. I think the greatest gift that the Scottish nationalists have ever had is Boris Johnson. I think there's a detestation of a lot of arrogance down London, and about these guys. The pale white Tory guys down in London.
Do you? That isn't wishful thinking on your part. Do you really?
No, I think they will go for it, Jude. I think at this stage there's a growing. I was watching Question Time last night as well, Jude, and if you see, I've talked to a number of Scottish people in recent time, and you can detect a real sort of, they are seriously pissed off with Boris Johnson and the arrogance and and this feeling that whatever England wants comes first, and to hell with you.
Do you think that'll be big enough, that feeling of disgust with Johnson? Do you think that'll be strong enough to counter the difficulties of a land border, the difficulties of a different currency, the difficulty with, as I say, the law of
No, but you remember, I think we had a conversation, Jude. The last time I got the impression that the SNP didn't get across exactly what exactly they were standing for. It seemed when they were asked about currency, it was sort of half in, half out in regards to euro. If the Queen was still going to be head of state, it was half in. Some said she would still remain as head of state and all that. Jude, they should have about 10 key points. Simple. One, we will be independent. 2, we will join the euro. 3, we will have a president, or there'll be no the Queen, or else the Queen will be still head of state. And they should make it simple. So the 10 key points, or whatever the hell it is.
Couldn't agree.
The last time Jude was very confused. I remember listening to it, and I remember Alex Salmon was on it a couple of times. I remember him getting tied up in knots. Will you be able to keep sterling? Oh yes, we will. And then somebody would say something, and I wasn't able to answer the question.
Yeah, I think I've said this before. I think Irish, those advocating Irish reunification, should do exactly the thing that you've described the Scots doing, or should do. That is, produce your central 10 points in bullet point form, clear, totally readable inside a matter of a minute or two.
Yeah.
And beside that, have the 600-page document or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
And then elaborates on that, and anybody can refer to from the 10 points. Want more detail? Go to the big document. But I do agree with you completely. People do need to have the thing laid out unambiguously and clearly. Very few people, even Scots, I imagine, waded their way through that 600
absolutely, not at all. And Jude, look at Trump. He won an election almost on Twitter. Simple, straightforward. No, by the way, his problem was he didn't have the detail to back it up, but he still won. And by the way, Jude, here, moving on, you mentioned Scotland and Scottish independence. I see there was a big, well, not a big row, but the Daily Express went bananas that Nicola Sturgeon didn't courtesy when she met the Queen earlier. I think it was yesterday or the day before. And one of the leading critics was none other than Arlene Foster, the former leader of the DUP, who said during she was amazed that the SNP leader hadn't courtesy to the Queen, because she considered it one of the greatest honours of her life during her time as First Minister was to courtesy and meet the Queen.
But maybe Nicola Sturgeon had a sore knee that day.
No, I think, Jude, you're asking the question. I think it's getting more hardline in Scotland. I think Nicola is sending out a wee message. The days of our, calf doffing to the English is over.
The thing is this, Pat, it would be a massive boost. I mean, I can't think of anything that would boost the possibility of a border poll more than a successful indie ref in Scotland.
Absolutely.
It would just, everything would be, you could add on another 50% at least, to Irish nationalism and a desire for a reunited Ireland. These are interesting times we're living through, Pat.
By the way, Jude, you're getting, and I'm not adding anything much to the debate, but the one common denominator in all this is Boris Johnson. Yeah.
So you think
he's absolutely detested by just about everybody. The unionists don't like him. The nationalists don't like him. The Dublin government doesn't like him. Holyrood doesn't like him. The Labour Party doesn't like him. But he's the Prime Minister with an 83-seat majority.
So what you're saying essentially is we all should be lighting blessed candles and going down our knees and saying a wee prayer for Boris each night before.
Yeah, and like
that he may be in good health.
I think it's now 3 former Prime Ministers have said he's going down the wrong path.
Yeah. He certainly seems to be 1 or 2 wrong moves, I think. Okay, those are all very heavy topics, Pat. I'm always a man for, well, this isn't a light topic, but it's less, let's say, it's less national in its impact. It's got to do with the deputy whip for the Tories, a man whose name, and I kid you not, his name is Chris Pincher. And why that is interesting is he is the deputy chief whip of the Conservative Party, and he has been identified as having groped not 1, but 2 men at a private club of some kind. The Tories must have some clubs, you know. Your wild imagination couldn't pop. I mean, I'm trying to picture the scene. What sort of scene? Are they all sitting around in leather armchairs? And then this guy gets up and goes over and gropes 2 men.
I saw that. He's the deputy?
Deputy chief.
That's another unfortunate deputy chief called Pincher. And he gropes 2 men at a private. I think it was the Garden Club, by the way. You know, it would be a stuffy old colonel's place. So and apparently, by the way, Jude, here's back to Boris again. Apparently, he stepped down from some role before because of inappropriate behaviour. So you have to ask yourself about Boris's judgment of character. If somebody had stepped down before and he reappoints him again, and now he had stepped down a second time. But Jude, it's all, I don't know what it is with the Tories and this. No, and certain other people, it's money and financial scandals. With the Tories, it's always sex. It's always sex.
Isn't it? Maybe they have enough money, so it doesn't.
I think they have enough money. Yeah. You know what is going back to Perfumo and the number of guys that have had to resign, and of course the Russians back in the old days of the Cold War. The one way they always got the British was get them in some sort of sex trap.
Honey trap or honeypot. The thing is though that Mr. Pincher, pinch him.
You're Pincher,
Mr. Pincher. He has resigned as deputy chief whip. He hasn't resigned as an MP.
Not at all.
Wow, I wonder why that is, Pat. Why would you say? Would you hazard a guess as to why that might be?
There probably isn't. I don't understand. But you look at the guy who was caught on quite recently looking at porn, and and then there was what was the other one? I can't. It doesn't matter. The guy up in the where they lost the seat there quite recently. He was jailed for 15 months for sexually assaulting a teenager. It just seems to go on and on and on. You know.
Well, my strong belief is that guy will not be losing his seat. He'll not resign because he could assault the entire Carlton club 4 days in a row, and he still wouldn't be going to a by-election because Boris has had 2 by-elections and they were not good news.
No, absolutely.
That guy was to resign after assaulting 2 men in the Carlton club. Do you think that people are going to vote for him? I don't think so somehow. However, having said all that, Pat, and as we move towards the final stages of our excellent discussion, I have to say that really, is it right that poor Mr. Pincher should be made to suffer like this? And for us to laugh at him? I mean, I do laugh at him, and he is obviously a creep doing that kind of thing. But should he have the whip removed, or should he be taken away from being the deputy chief whip? Or should he even for a moment consider resigning his seat? Because let's face it, Pat, What he did has nothing to do with the ability to discharge his duties.
But Judy, hold on. When you're elected as a public representative, when you're elected to the House of Parliament,
Yeah.
you have to be held to a higher standard. Have you gone to? Hold on. Have you gone a new group? A couple of people, and I have a fair idea what part of them he was grouping. Dude, that is unacceptable behaviour under.
I agree with you. I agree it's unacceptable, but it's nothing to do with Pat, if you were going to have a brain operation, or you were getting a man to build you an extension on your house, would you, and you heard that he was a bit of a pervert, not pervert, but a guy who was given to groping occasionally, but you knew he was an excellent builder, and you knew he was giving you a good rate, would you not? Why on earth would you start asking about his morals?
You keep bringing this up. This is not comparing like with like or apples with apples. This is comparing apples with oranges. This guy is a public representative. He's supposed to be a role model for.
No, he's not.
He is, yes.
No, he's supposed to be a good MP.
No, I don't care if the guy who's carrying out my brain surgery has 14 wives and God knows whatever. That's his business, as long as he can do my brain. But if I elect a guy to represent that my community values, what I want to see in society, I want decency and fairness and accountability and transparency. I don't elect one of the crime families in Dublin.
No. I think you're thinking about somebody who might lead a scout pack, or perhaps you're thinking about electing a clergyman as to be the pastor of the parish.
I'm just saying to behave like an ordinary, decent human being, and you don't get a bye ball. You don't get a bye ball, Jude, when you're standing as the member of Parliament. You're expected to behave. And I remember there used to be that any minister was deemed to have misled Parliament or did anything that was not in keeping with his office, there was a notice under resign. That day
no, you're adding on a bit, Pat. You're adding on a bit. I think it is certainly that thing about lying to Parliament, but that's clearly, you can see how that disqualifies him, or at least it's doing the job poorly if you're going to lie to your colleagues. That's different. That's not quite the same thing as saying, why on earth would you give a bye ball to the brain surgeon or to the guy doing the extension in your house, but you wouldn't give it to Chris Pincher?
Because Mr. Pincher is a member of Parliament. He's elected by the people to represent the people. My house builder's here to do a job in my house. I don't ask him to be a role model.
Pat, this role model thing is nonsense.
If you're a member, why don't we put an Al Capone in that case?
No.
But what you're saying is you're taking it to a ridiculous thing.
Al Capone is dead.
I'm not saying he has to be a Boy Scout or Father Mackenzie, but what he should be is at least a reasonable human being. And if you go around groping men and a nightclub and you're an elected representative, I do not think you're a very good example.
Maybe it was just him trying to be friendly.
Of course it was. Anyway, changing the subject totally. I saw it yesterday, and it's straight up. What do you make of the outcry following last week's Galway Armagh game, whereby there was an absolute melee? There's a young fella apparently, allegedly, we'll have to say allegedly, because it just gouged somebody's eye. And at Armagh, I saw what do you call him? Column, I can't remember. O'Rourke, the RT guy, says every time Armagh are involved in a game, they ends up pretty, badly. And he says they better address it, because he says, and his view, what's going on now is pure thuggery. What's your view?
I tend to agree with him, actually. I think we should keep in mind, though, before we go into our cultural cringe position, that this isn't something exclusive to Gaelic games. I mean, there have been brawls at big international soccer games, club games. And I remember I was in Canada, and they used to watch the ice hockey there, the big teams like, the Boston, whatever they are, and the Montreal somethings. And every game, you inevitably would have a really big punch up between at least a couple of the players, and they would slam into each other with a viciousness. It was unbelievable. And that was accepted as being part of the game. Now, I think that's wrong, but I'm just saying, let's keep that in mind as well when we're condemning this. I agree with that. But for God's sake, Pat, see soccer, the referees in soccer, a corner's being taken. Every defender is grabbing and pushing and holding arms and so on with the forwards, and they're never penalised.
There's a certain but you know, I think there's somebody holding on to your jersey as you're moving around. That's maybe part of the game.
That's against the rules.
But punches been thrown, and if it's been proven, there's photographs, but well, I would say alleged eye gouging, because I'm not sure exactly that happened on it and so on. And there's been a lot of controversy about it. And Jude, they're saying that things have got so bad that they're talking about that teams might have to come out from different entrances or different times. Now, Jude, that does not reflect on our native games. If that's the sort of thuggery that the two teams can't even come out together.
I've been in agreement with you there, Pat. And I suspect, that it may have been in the heat of the moment. But again, if O'Rourke says, that the Armagh team is particularly prone to this kind of thing.
Well, you see, Jude, let me interrupt. They got involved with Tyrone and they got involved with Donegal, and then last Sunday they got involved with Galway.
Yeah.
So that's 3 in a row.
Serial offenders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's saying that something that the Tyrone County, or not the Tyrone, Armagh County Board will have to address. That as the Woldy one, is it so important to them that they're willing to bend the rules?
Well, it's not even bending the rules. I mean, it is thuggery. You're right. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Yeah. And it's awful because Gaelic has become such an intelligent game compared to what it used to be when I was a kid. Yeah. I mean, tactics and ways of maneuvering and set patterns and all sorts of wonderful things, and training to a high degree, and diet and everything else, to bring it down to this kind of, two parishes having to go at each other.
Exactly, like faction fighting.
I think we feel self-righteous enough after all that, Pat.
Absolutely.
Okay, we can face into the weekend with clean consciences and clean hands.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Good luck, Dr.
All right, Pat, thank you.
Thank you.